di karalana. Ngachung adu di sra thön tambe shangchu chisem ta thanda shang session. Ngachung adu ra. Sanji yuni nyen to pe sla de gala. Thanda shangchu chisem nyen to pe to ba che. Tene shebaran juba chu tene shebaran juba chu sla de gala ta tin le do. Thön tambe shangchu chisem di yus di nyen ba to pe che yeshi ter yeshi tene yul jenchi is sheba anjuba chuba is terin jubi is yeshi soso toba soso to veritana sanams yeshi chin zipe di kal khawre dara senji yuni ngeto pes tinde wis senji yuni ta dinde we pena loy minde yudi ani ngebar toba chebana ra toshi yeshi Toshi yeshi terni se sheba lanjubi yujin da la chibana soso tobe soso rangri nangta nas tere shubi yeshi chi soso nata na sana tei dani nes di inji thula khande legde
tinde do chud ta nganzo gi loi yudin yenasra loi yudin yena sheba yira lo thela jugwaresra ani namshi ranji ni lo Nagarjuna sra chuji changsam gi sala yara sala nyambar ne bares
tagara sunga chiti gapa no gatsi ne mamje shira ham ini ngeto bane
so 56 now the translation in our handout it's not the best one, so we look to the other one. All right. So 56, ascertaining the object of the mind, consciousness will engage in it. Once your very own awareness becomes pure, free from all obscurations, free from all afflictions, you will dwell right in the Bhumi's nature. Bhumi now herein refers to the Bodhisattva's grounds. So first Bhumi, second Bhumi, third Bhumi, these are the levels of the grounds that a bodhisattva treads in the path to enlightenment. So in short, ascertaining the object of the mind, consciousness will engage in it. Once your very own awareness becomes pure, you will dwell right in the Bhumi's nature, right in the bodhisattva grounds nature. Yes.
Tadi la chidange chugulong kutuku sundu shida phashudara anshu chembe necho na la digala chukuro shigesara women teni sedigala ane omi ginde de lonku shuse ginde de ne omi tibu ku bishugul ane lonku shula jura teche karo omi teni nangze pa la digala ter chibi tuku o la de tabshambal dura nge tsuti ma dinalo de minda
ti jema dire tagarang
de ni tsadin
ngajunga dindira
ngajunga den chukulong kutuku sunla jida ane Sheba sumbo la di da chulong tu sum chukolong ko tuku sum ra sheba sumbo te sumbo sheba sumbo chik te ni is debar chuwa dani to la di da chukolong ko tuku sum ngo deba jeba chitang an zon ku sum go dani chela jo ti dan da shi des
So now moving on 57. Now this talks about the embodiment of the three kayas or the three bodies. So the embodiment of the three kayas. First we look at when it says the verse itself, the mighty Lord's magnificent abode, the beautiful domain of Aganishta and consciousness, the three of these together can be blended into one, I dare say. Now we look at the other translation. The great and mighty one's supreme abode, Aganishta, that's so beautiful, and consciousnesses, all three of them fuse into a single one, I say. So herein, the three, when we are talking about the Dharmakaya, then the Dharmakaya is the embodiment of the Dharmakaya is the embodiment of the other three kayas, the other three bodies. And the other three bodies are the first, the nature truth body, two, the complete enjoyment body, three, the emanation body. So the embodiment of these three bodies, the nature truth body, the complete enjoyment body, the emanation body, is the Dharmakaya itself.
tadi dilo da tadi gala khasan de kusun river chebadi ani gobul rangi dagi mawala de khurangi de sungu yela itra tile ani odla khalna chibi nana yon chembe le digala chibi nana la yadla ani peji shamba nala tanda konchen ro shashra konchen je ani yon chen bala de tuku shasha ani phabi nana hatso bala de longo hatso ni lajda titega longo che anshu chembula de chukula shade anshu chembo pa me des kebi tsayang la de de keba mambu zuku shubi su ku isra sei jukain ba roshla ta khanda dikala ranja shigini ro chidra chugulong kutuge ya chibe nana konchela di koncheche ani yons chembala di tukuche phabi nana la di longkuche ani anshu chembula di chug ranja shigidra kebi tsa jukains
Marta del kap del Geshema idiji sebo soina nanga zo kusum gi dani la ra kusum gi dani di ngoni ku ran shage so ya na chugu shage so
kusung dani de ngoni ku chugu kala kusung wonde ba chidangi chugu longu chugu la jura ngo machi ba ngo chi de ba pena da pena ende ro ja da sanje nga zo sanje chomde de ro dan chugu la sha ra chugu nambang ra 다 롱고라디 네 오미토부쿠비 싱가 코나데 슈바 뎀발라디가라 만조 롱고고도 치투고 말라야자 롱고 코들래 아니 사제 파파마도 아니 네 투고 말라야 데레주라 다 투고라디가라 티베 쿠디 아니 간조기 제게 칸도 메발라 마테네 아니 심징이 로든즈가 피고라 투고 다 추고라디 페나다 페나 롱고고 줄레 예베게 아니 다비기 춘이 짓거든요 데레줄라기스라 지당이 투고 춘이 레레요다 along tsani khara nyeba nga den ji zuku thatu la yadra nyeba nga da meden bi zuku thatu tu ge ba de ta tsani yota tamba ji to chi
So now maybe we make sense of the different kayas first and what exactly do they mean. So when we look at the Dharmakaya, the truth body, then as the name itself suggests, Dharma, truth, then the Dharmakaya is the embodiment of the Dharmadhatu itself. The manifestation of the Dharmadhatu itself in a form or in a body at the moment of enlightenment. Now, when we are talking about the Nirmanakaya or the emanation body, then when we look at the historical Buddha, we understand that that body of the Buddha, the historical Buddha, that is Nirmanakaya or an emanation body, because he has taken on that emanation, that form, to teach the teachings, and as such sentient beings were able to see him. Now when we are talking about the complete enjoyment body, then such is beyond the perception of sentient beings. This kind of form of the Buddha, form of the enlightened beings, are only perceived by realized and enlightened beings or noble beings only, not all sentient beings.
tena ngazo nyeba nga den de zuku thatu le de longkurda nyeba nga da mene bi zuku thatu de ani tuku shajra tende shade ngazo ngena chuba chuba khasna nyeba nga de zu de ban nyeba nga da ne nyemba du nyemba kor nyemba chen nyemba chue nyemba la ra 다 코르ኛ 발라이들 ngazo shuge ma chuba chuba khasna 코르냐 발라디 코르 chance phaba shata da ko de dem ba ro la de jura tende indi gala ani 뒤치시 코에 마동 받아 슈바다 데말라시라 딜라운데 딱 코르냐 발라디 gala tende 사제기 파베기 콜에 아니 코다디 chuba 이제 다나 테마요 근데 이나 아니 가르라래
말에 단단한 적이 수구래 기저 지시라 당보 수구들 숨샤인 거라 그래
콜 숨샤이
콜 숨라
콜 추고는 거투고서
수구 숨라지 샤요 마라
zukul샤
는 적이 단다 땡원 찍dro서 한 적이
추고는 거투고체라
마레 디간라 찍드or 커버트 쇼 Was there a verse or a line which talked about Rupakaya before? Can you find it? Which verse was it? 55.
The second
Zuko,
translation
Zuko.
Mm.
Choose Zuko.
So through the protectors, Rupa Kaya may remain for many years.
But I'm going to go on Zuko letter.
Zuko le jor.
Zuko.
Oh. The Zuko le de la nganzo gi
Zuko longo chokora. Kula chadang on the Chuko longo chokola and show. Ta Zuko the Candela.
nganzo gi ngo ni gu da chuku la ni shara bo. Ngo ni gu di nganzo gi jejur gi rik. Sheba khorang la shage re. Sheba khorang la shage re. Ani tanda nganzo gi chuku le jora. Di nganzo gi rangshin ne rik. Di chuni khorang la shage chi.
Ngo ni ko ding ta the mazanda. In the Tandachibu the Rashini Lashada.
Chuku di rangshin ne ri rang.
Rashini Lashada. Chitangi could let Chuko longo chokoson shower.
So now, when we are talking about the kayas or the form or the bodies of the Buddha, the form that a Buddha can take, we talk about three types of forms that a Buddha can take: the Dhammakaya, the truth body, the Nirmanakaya, and then what was the other one? Sambhogakaya. So these three. So the Dhammakaya is the truth body. The Nirmanakaya is the activity body, and then the Sambhogakaya is the emanation body. Oh, okay. So the Nirmanakaya is the enjoyment body, and the Sambhogakaya is the complete.
The other way around. Enjoyment body. Sambhogakaya is normally translated as the joy of the body.
And the Nirmanakaya is emanation. Chuku.
Lonkula Sambokaya.
Rare.
Chukula Nirvanakaya.
Nirmanakaya. And Dharmakaya Chuku.
Dhammakaya Chukuya.
So when we talk about these three types of forms of the body, then the Dharmadatu that we are referring to right now is what we call the naturally abiding quality. So this naturally abiding quality is manifested in the form of the Dharmakaya.
Tatanda Kaziler. Which Nagura. That Tanda de la Kebit Sayan, Lady Gala Kebit Sayan, Jukain, Bapena, Keba Amambu, Suzuku, Shubi, says, Te Jukain by Kain Hana, and Pishamadus and George Dura, Kain Hana, Shuro Semje Kanachis, Shuro Semje Kanachis, and Pad maybe Kebaya, Tangan, Simple the lesser, Pad maybe Keba Tame Balaja, Tians, Tsayan Kangi. Sunjuna la de tsayang saje ki is sun ang the sunje che le re sunji chin is ra so cha na ji so ne so cha na ji so ne pi le di saje rangi tse is do
So now herein we are talking about the Dharmadhatu, which is embodied in the form of the Dhammakaya, and how. Now, 59th, it is that which guards the outer realms of beings and preserves their lives as well through countless kalpas, countless eons. It is that which makes it possible for life to preserve within all beings, the Dhammakaya. And this Dharmadhatu is, now, for lack of a better word, sort of the life force. Ngabji di anjogoni chisoro nandas.
ngaji da. Chibe na yon changsra, chibe na la digala, tanda di kanchin ro shada. Chibe na la peche shimbajin tanda da inge peche pe gen jisun pe da tabara. Chigna sun ju dina al marmar nge chole ji tangsa. Khazan. Tina lo ende ro ji trisha dina ma ka sinde ro tara. Ane karsa chibe na la de kanchin shara. Yon chen la de tuku do shasha. Tuku tangas la tara. Ane pabe na taso pa la de longku. Ane anshu chenpu da yang chuku ranjar shasha. Anshu chenpu tsepa me la da. Anshu chenpu la sa da la chuku ranjar shasha. Gan la chuku la shasa. Ande shekdi. Ane kebi tse yang tenye che la di ta ti paru la kharchu shana keba pat keba mambu yu zuku shubi is ku tse ju kan hamna la dia o madla mande shi.
Now, 58. For the immature, for the childish, it renders total knowledge. For noble ones, or affords variety. For the mighty gods, it grants long life. It is the cause for life spanning kalpas long march, eons long march. So it is talking about the function of each of these forms or kayas. And now the first one, for the immature, it renders total knowledge. This refers to the omniscient consciousness of a Buddha. Okay? For the immature, it renders total knowledge. For noble ones, for realized being, it affords variety. So what affords a realized being? The ability to emanate in different forms, to manifest in different forms, to help sentient beings. That's the emanation body. The Nirmanakaya, is that it? The Nirmanakaya. Similarly, to the mighty gods, it grants long lives. That's the complete enjoyment body. That's Sambhogakaya. Then it is the cause for life spanning eons long march. That's the Dharmakaya itself. Yes.
Tadi oldra ti ngapchu tujile sa. Ta di le da sanje ji sol ne be se rang gi se ta na kan ta sala ju kan la da ju kan me se pa te ni le de ju kan la sa de ga pa de me bi ke ba ne sra me se pa yi le de me se pa ta sanje te ni ji is le ta ju kan gi is ju kan gi le bi ka ane kholan ju bas kholan ju bi ju le sa isra ju kan gi debu la digala ani thenle sanje gi thenle jura tende mese pa khans khansi jiden de san hawa nga jiden la longo la ha jura hawa maybe is la digala ani ya chukulo sha hawa maybe chera kis ani zuku tas dushi shira chibi is ta pena dende zuku ga namba shawa de ani ge duje ngola ya ta nga zu chi chu sung wa ina khanda khonzo le shira gu lo che thoya jira shira ji thende re dun ju gu le digala dende zuku ga nambe ngola te go ya de ani duje ge shira khondo phero re ende sundu den dina ina kar du ta te ara ya ga igere sam khonzo ko de ya.
So now moving on, verse number 60. This, the very cause that knows no end. The results of such a cause are endless too. When imperceptibility is realized, prajna or wisdom becomes the condition for nirvana's dawning. Now this is very, we look at the other translation. In that whom's fruitions inexhaustible, through the special trait of non-appearance, engage in full for prajna's sake. This is much more simpler and it really hits it. It says, in that whose fruitions inexhaustible. In that herein refers to the cause. In that whose fruitions inexhaustible, through the special trait of non-appearance. Non-appearance herein referring to the phenomena not appearing, intrinsically existing. Phenomena not appearing, intrinsically existing. Non-appearance, not non-appearance, that's not utter non-appearance. Non-appearance of intrinsic nature. So, through the special trait of non-appearance, engage in full for prajna's sake. So, if we are asked, what's the special trait of non-appearance? Which of the three bodies enables the special trait of non-appearance? If we are asked the question, Dharmakaya. So it's touching upon the Dharmakaya, because the Dharmakaya is the embodiment of the Dharmadatu itself. So the Dharmadatu is the true nature of reality itself. So as such, this true nature of the reality, when it's embodied in the consciousness, then it doesn't, phenomena doesn't appear to have any kind of intrinsic existence. That is exactly non-appearance. So when this starts, then wisdom, true wisdom is cultivated at that point. Tainde do dishi jadu injina la ra. Nganzo gi da chuni nganzo gi ngo tanda nganzo gi chuji ying la ji ra. Ani tigi di jula ten chunjo ma res ra. Ina di khorang ju chagi res. Sanje duba sanje gi koban duba la judi chagi res. Chezan judi gi debo de la seba yo ma res ta. Dijik chasa len hangbodi. Tene ni tedawe ni tedawa di chego yo nasra judi ngon judi debo la ngon jurgo yo nas. Ene nganzo gi minawa ji gores ra. Minawa la na ene dembar duba minawa ji gores. Yuda yujen la dembar duba minawa ji gores. Yuda yujen dembar duba minawa ti khare gi ngon jutu gi re la nasra. Ene chugji ying di khorang tok tunas. Chuji ying di khorang tok tunasra. Ta tedawe ene chuji ying di tok balasra. Ene nganzo gi chugu drupa wasta. Ra chugu di chugu drupa la tene ene dembar duba minawa drupa yungu was. Tedawe dembar duba minawa duba di share of brand res.
Minawa drupa di.
Tedawe tok belo di tegarang share of res. So yes.
Complicated.
So I'm just trying to run it with Geshemala to see if this translation is correct too. Now with the commentary it becomes correct. Maybe we look at it in this manner, when in this says, this the very cause that knows no end. The results of such a cause are endless too. So even though we use the term cause for it, the Dharmadhatu itself is causeless. So similarly, in this translation, it says, in that whose fruition is inexhaustible. So that refers to the cause. So as we already talked about the boundless nature of consciousness, the very basic nature of the consciousness being boundless in its clarity, in its luminescence. So that's exactly what it is talking about. The results of such a cause are endless too. Mind, consciousness is boundless in its nature. Now, in the manner in which it engages as object, then if it engages the object with the appearance of intrinsic nature, then it's still obscured, the true nature of the mind. It's boundless and it's clear-light nature. Now, when the object doesn't appear as having any intrinsic nature, that's non-appearance at that point. Non-appearance, not just object, non-appearance of the subject itself as lacking any as having intrinsic nature. And that exactly is, the moment you realize the non-appearance, that exactly itself is wisdom or prajna.
지당이 공부를 두시니 이들아 산제 신의 편이라 다 지당이 산제 롱된샤죠. 나 안에 신의 편이 지르로 십자리 지 두절 다 군이 가는 가다 군이디 신대 선지라 얘들아. 덴데지기 아니 군이 덴데지기 두스 찍땅로 군이 따다 테마서 찍도 파바타면 찍 십제제 찍 두자거나 고물로 십제나 찍 두자 덴데지기로 제발 군이 사제기 제스를 페기레스 덴데 페요도가 아니 코랑이 사제기 숨샤주기 안들 제바체니 넘버만 버르든지기 레스라 데니 땡주된래 개바차기레스 데니 이니 찍칼로 두절마 땡야기야 덴데기 롱데 예베기 아니 그 지신 담바지라 달로 단다 사제 신래 편으로 니동하 니동아제 두절 로라 탈피 두제 던제 말에 니동 아제도라
니동
투자도라 와 언니만 가서 warness 되니 또 투제 긴지고 쳐서 다 근데 이디가 딱 단다 코랑 군이 쓰이나 달로 지동하 라 페지
담보 공부를 디젤라 파바토미르
라 근데 이디가 아니 다 근데기 개바체 뭐 사제기 지스 제스 아니 다가이 개바든지라 단데기 숨샤지 당한서 콘조기 뒤당한서 뒤 해봐 싶어줘라 라 이내야다 아주 또 두고문데 시민들의 이외 말은 아주 가리는 베조치 수지 배 트랜스레이트 담을 디날 따야다 베이신이네 베이날로 그러는데 맘만 보라 그래서 다야 때도 가서 시다 문다와요래 가시는 가서 책 찾아내 거리를 하고 문다다 라 this is ligda ani ya charan zuge tanda ngazu digi laba chanje ma imbar ani deba shamba loro chide ko dewa rasigra.
Now at this point maybe we talk a little bit about the author himself, Nagarjuna. So the coming of Nagarjuna was prophesied by the Buddha himself. The Buddha himself, before he passed away, made a prophecy that after 500 years from his passing, that there would come a master who will begin to continue his teachings. And exactly 500 years after, Nagarjuna was born, and then Nagarjuna, I think Nagarjuna might be the first to actively write commentaries on the Buddha's teachings. And when we are talking about the middle way philosophy, then all different schools of middle way philosophy in effect draw their source from his works. And as such, and then similarly after Nagarjuna, through his work, he inspired a lot of other classical Indian masters, such as Asanga and Dharmakriti, Chandrakriti, and so forth later on, who went on to write important Buddhist treatises. So all of these, in effect, really do, all the classical Buddhist literature, in effect, really do come from Nagarjuna himself. And now, with that being said, now in English, it's even though it doesn't, it's not that archaic. The translation up to a certain point is convenient, but when we look at the original Tibetan, the terms themselves are very archaic, very poetic in their nature, so it's very, very difficult to immediately make sense of what exactly is being talked about there. But we have the convenience of reading it in English, wherein to some extent it's simplified, too simplified for its own good, but to some extent that is also very helpful to initially approach a text. Now, as readers of Buddhist literature, we should take the approach that if we are not able to immediately understand it, we should take it upon ourselves to read commentaries on the work with each verse that we have doubts about. We shouldn't immediately become discouraged that I'm not understanding the root text itself. That's not the approach to adopt, because anyone who approaches this kind of text struggle immediately, especially if you approach it in the original, you struggle even more.
지단데 응조기 자와 코랑 그 숨샤지 다가라 셴에 야슈라 있는 잠자 디 차타나 아니야 디 컨데벌타에 뺏기죠. 먼저 표현 나롱 저기 단다 파신 참마 오만주 남레 마보지 장거라 잠자간 저기 자와들 마다니 color the devil time ma thajiro chegor ra chaw kharatana de binango to generation de jim to yujuma anzu lo thu de ta or deba chanjan to de jamda deba ta ma thadi chaw gal spun tu mu de phathor de do de ligda jamda nga chawa chipota onde ne dina lo chima chi kwa de marani ra nan tidu gal pha deba ta ne pheni ro ta ninja tesni to ta go de peki chamta pechta ra.
So this is the kind of approach you need to take towards your study of Buddhist philosophy and Buddhist literature. That if you find it difficult to approach the root text itself, make use of the commentaries that exist. Now, as you make use of the commentaries, it might be the case that the commentaries are very extensive in their nature, very detailed. And as such, it is sometimes difficult to kind of summarize what exactly is being talked about here. So as such, it is important to refer back to the root text and then to create an overall view of each particular verse by balancing your understanding of the commentary, comparing it to the root text itself.
파신 로드다 아니 간절라다 타마들라 라체테 오라 this 버르들 로 방보로 질레스다 칼라나 로드다 nga 야포치 마선산죠 칼라나 가서 저페 모더 로드다 거 단도 야포징에 거 말아 가서 드드 진주열에 따다 신기면서라 자가갈 마산나 타마이 데바자로 버르츠 드마드 아스마데 산나타서 시마라지로 점잘리기 데바야 말아.
So now I would like to share a personal experience that I had over the course of my years in a classical monastic institute. And now all of us are really interested in dialectics, in debate and logic. So as such, when the initial years of training weren't really that hard, because it's about the collected topics, the mind and awareness, science and reasonings. But after that basic training, you move on to the Paramita literature, the perfection literature. Now, there you begin to struggle a little bit, because you have to read a lot of commentaries to make sense of the sutras themselves. Now, it becomes the case that you depend more on the commentaries later on than the actual sutras themselves. So as such, after I completed the study in the Perfection Sutras, then you get a degree or a certificate. But at the moment when I got that certificate, I had an intense regret that I depended too much on the commentaries, that I'm not able to look back at the sutras and make sense of the sutras. So as such, this is not the kind of approach one should take. We were young at that time, so we weren't really we didn't really know the correct way to approach the study of these literatures. So it's important that the understanding from the commentary that you gain should be related immediately to the root text itself. So as you study the commentaries, it is important to leave the commentaries a little bit and then go back to the root text, and then try to mentally remember, mentally think about how the commentaries explain each of the verses, and then begin to see if the root text itself begins to convey some meaning to you.
지당이 가서 가시한 레자 신인들이 연애라 레자 돌아코나 따라 연애 되가 따투네 빼버라. 먼저 싸워야 타투서디 아니 자가이 개바다 상제래 두라. 뭐라 지당 대바도 저 그래서 가시나나 마 원래 시행이 레나 뺀땅 땅가로지 차샤가지 이 빼졌다다다 수수기 냠뇽도다 아니 지코데오 왜치데 마음밖에 믿어줄 팬치데 예지 점거. 남편 미신바지 인데서 안데는 대바 망부치래 되어라. 땅한테 대바치 붙다 오더라야 싸워 보더니 들리다. 수수 신와이나 단도 집에 레자다데 자가이게 기토는 신이나 카투 따라다 투네야시. 아니 마고네 신바는 미신바인 대바다라.
So ideally it should be the case that we are able to approach the root text itself and understand the meaning of the text itself. But this is very difficult. So as such, there exist commentaries. Now, when we say that there are commentaries, it is important to keep in mind that there are differing commentaries of the same root text. So if you depend on commentaries alone, then you wouldn't be able to appreciate the original meaning of the root text itself. So as such, it is important to ensure that there is a balance between the manner in which you approach the root text and the commentary. And more importantly, if any of you know Sanskrit, then you have a true advantage. You can approach it in the original language itself, in Sanskrit. And even in Sanskrit, there are commentaries. Yes. Because all the Tibetan commentaries from India are effective translations of Sanskrit.
Do you not use ChatGPT? Sort of AI? Do you not use AI or any sort of ChatGPT?
For
understanding these texts?
I wouldn't.
Any sort of AI generative way to understand these texts better?
ChatGPT.
Yeah, you can upload PDFs of these commentaries and then have a conversation with the thing.
Oh, I don't think this is a proper approach. There's a Buddha GPT also.
Yeah, exactly, right?
거의 딜라 워든다 미스릭뉴 라이저라. ChatGPT. 미스릭뉴. Artificial intelligence. 근데 팔아 계절이나 술은 렌상마 장년들도 근데 표시 땅나 디기래서.
잠잠이 이게 지가 잠잠 그디 가파도 들들 따다 지금이다. 라.
줄 라기요 말.
줄라. 저트는 레제다. 레디 저트는 거 딱딱 리기네. 다디 하우마스다. 가디 셔디 하우미. 다 타타타타 라기 아이는 잠잠한 저기 되는데 저한테도 그 나랑서 하 고지지 드나 그 너고요 하고다 다 한마고는 가서 파트지도 쓸라 레팅 오라 소소 하고든지 그 가르래도 잠잠다다 라입니다.
So try to think about it in this manner, that if you know the answer to a question and if you ask ChatGPT or any artificial intelligence, you would know that they are wrong. But if you yourself do not know the answer and if you ask a question, how can you effectively say whether the machine is right or not wrong?
Even in my very, 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 very beginner level of Tibetan, when I asked ChatGPT to elaborate on a word or so, and then even in my beginner level, oh, this is complete nonsense. What is telling me, right?
가정이 다 버르면 챙기지도 되게 담은가를 트라이지 된지 트위인 봐. 진짜 좋은데가 다 버르면 질 달라면 쓰지는 거다. 다. 그 그런 맛이나 셴바지 주시니로 시다. 이 체대에서 뭐 삼.
So that's the maybe danger, that the machine doesn't know how to say I don't know. For example, Geshema was trying to translate something from Tibetan, a small request written in Tibetan about Rinpoche called Thagpo Rinpoche, and the machine translated it as Dalai Lama.
Yeah. Yeah, 그렇지 트라이지.
So, Geshema, do you have an idea why these masters made the scriptures so technical and poetic and kind of like hard to digest and abstract? Is it to maintain the teachings, or is it really to trigger us to learn? Because I sometimes question the value of such texts because it's actually so cryptic and so technical. So I'm just wondering if you, after studying for years these texts, if you have an idea why so wrong.
Tene Geshema chirangi nyongwa julasra samsura kariyesra tanda ganzogi ani kheba ra ani pendrubla soba de zogi ani ganzogi koran zogi ta samche de zoma semi tayon de zomba esra ani manche do pe tsitrapo yejo ani nyanga do mambo yejo ani dende yongo dos ani temata do lona gotsweji yongo mendos ani dende do ki dende do nala nyanga yejo tsitrapo yejo dendegi sobda china la thigwegi gobado jumsendo yore besra
먼저 돼. 단다 뒤치고래.
mare
지당이.
khebad zukhran zugi thidan ro jera trabodo nyenga do weju khokabo yeju thigdos tithigwegi gobado khareresra samlochi ne tanna nganzulata susu gi cheba chegore susu samlo tangole dendegi loji che chedo thibore besra kai sena samjam nga ende samlo tang zo dende traboji thina da chora mindu sansara yongudus
내가 다가라서 이 마사뉴라. 너. 가서나 가서 단다 생이로 장인데 알아. 저기 빼지 샤워. 당한테 분발하는 뒤거라. 마 산제 처밤이 처분을 샤워. 다 아래 동부 아래 산제하고 말은 신이 장디 산제를 가라. 대 처밤이 처분을 가래. 봐. 단가 미리디서 가요 뉴 밴도 샤나 렐레라다. 당가서 아래 다 콘저디 빼로지 샤워다. 근데도 일단 미다바에 초단지 미다바에 빼는 사지 세바미 저분으로 직 근데도 샤워에는 되게 시커런게 빼커는 나가서 뭐너뭐도다. 봐. 가 엔데도 삼게 디네 디저 칙도 lap에 시커런을 따오데 신랍진도 주서라. 디 제바도 제바 먼저 남들이 분발하는 알아서 남들 시초가 배진 땅이. 봐. 다디 디 빼데 하고 디 대마부지 하고 아니 사제에 봐 하고 사제를 아니 되게 잡아메기 제봉래 봉바에 그 같다는 아주 깔래 가버 서주로다 근데 디 빼데 하고 알거라 마부지 하고도 있어요 삼사치도 나라게 삼나라 텔레 팬도 있어요 가지 말아봐라봐 저는 아주 또야 돼 무시마시야 파 가디 차보 있는 차보들 파사지 단데 디 여인 마부지 싫어하더라 근데 지면 로선.
So I had the same kind of concerns when I was young, because when we used to engage in debate, immediately the kind of examples, the kind of subject that we used to debate Now in this day and age, you only use a simple word like pot, and then you begin to debate about pot. But back in the days, it wasn't the case that we use simply the term pot. We use pot in this manner. The Amitabha Buddha's life vessel pot as an example of pot. Now when you first begin to debate about a pot in this manner, then first you are ignorant of what exactly is Amitabha Buddha, and secondly you are ignorant about what exactly is a life vessel, and then the only thing you can take away from that is the pot. But still, at that time, even though we did struggle, but this forces you to appreciate the fact that there is a Buddha first. Then there is a Buddha called the Amitabha Buddha first. Then there is something called the life vessel. And then there is something called a pot, which is the embodiment of this life vessel of the Amitabha Buddha. So there is a process in which you begin to appreciate more when there are terms like this that is being used. Otherwise, if we simply debated about pot, all we have understood was the lack of impermanence of the pot. That's it. But when you use an example like this, it gives you a true appreciation of the overview of the Buddhist study, Buddhist philosophy.
Chini yang peshe tsamni kansa di nese ge yu de le chebado, ra. Pena pyo ina ani chi rido da, shina ro da, ya ro da tendele pesha. Jaga nalo ina lang chen ro da, yang kurangi di yu le yebe ge simjen de pesha ni ro tendele chebado, ra. Ta disang tsamni ji ina yang ma chen ri gi tolo ma pesha ya ta pena ga khaba ro, yema khaba de pesha se she mi ko ro thoya me. 당아서 디상 진적체로 하잖아 남들도다 아무 가봐야 다탱간 디상 체리기 돈 도고도 뭐 시도다 라 예매 있는 아주 되게 빼샤서요 말아 그 빼샤나 씩 다는 아주 차고 차야 돼 가서는 딘디 통해 매줘 양 예만 예줘로 되게 쳐봐요라 라 빼나 단대기 들려야 아주 그 빼로 샤는 아주 지금 아무지 뒤와이나 나한테는 뭐 로자타 뭐 보다 콘솔을 차고 차대 콘솔 통해 매서 유디 차는데 라식 차고 차요 라.
So now, when we look at the poetic nature of these works, then it comes from the time and place in which these masters were born. For example, when we look at the works of the classical Indian masters, then the poetic language is a little bit different from the classical Tibetan masters. Because when we look at the classical Tibetan master's work, then the poetic language is more pastoral in its nature. It talks about yaks, pastures, grassland, and so forth. Now, when we look at the poetic language of the Indian masters, then it has its own flavor. Or it kind of highlights the time they were born in, the social structure, the environment that they were born in, what was prevalent at that time. Now, when we look at the works of the modern masters, then these are the kind of language that we appreciate, because we ourselves are in the same time and place. So when we look at the work of the modern masters, then they talk about aeroplanes, genes, scientific development, and so forth. This we appreciate. Now, the manner in which we find some kind of sense of difficulty in unpacking that poetic language is simply the case that what exists back then, what was prevalent back then, is no longer prevalent right now. And similarly, 1,000 years from now, examples that we relate with, language that we relate with, 1,000 years from now wouldn't really relate it in the same manner.
신다를 빼시겨. 신다 나도 넘어 던지 신다를 빼상. 나 별에 신다 시 통만이. 네. 나 신다를 마샤는데 안에 디 신다 콜로는 미치데 찌데 지마무도. 알레 당부 신다 그런 거면은 미치 가에 미집 가에 미 등자하고 옵니다. 라. 다 하고니지 남들 그 페이지 땅데니지 알레 디디디를 다디 라티 데우 쇼지라. 세상 그 디디 디스 디 짬바보 두이 그런 예언들 신다도 통교지라. 근데 진짜 짬바보 그런 예언을 아니 간 샤비 빼 드네로 샤용 거라. 그런서 디디 밀라 라티에 콘도 시디 레라이기 라다 간조기 디페데 통마뉴 가사지레네 칼카부 참다라시야 근데 지지냐 칼카부 참
And now this becomes all the more clear when we look at when we were studying the Madhyamika literature, the middle way literature, which mainly talks about emptiness. Then in the analysis of emptiness, the ancient Indian masters used the example of a chariot. So you begin to analyze the chariot. There is what is called the sevenfold analysis of the chariot to essentially establish that the chariot does not exist in the parts or the collection of the parts of the chariot. Now, if you haven't seen a chariot in your life, it is a little bit difficult when the master begins to say that the chariot is not the spoke of the wheel, not the axle, and so forth. You haven't seen an axle or a spoke in your life. So it was the case that in Tibet, we don't see any chariot. And then when you begin to study the middle way literature, immediately it talks about the sevenfold analysis of chariot and talks about the spoke of the wheel, the axle, and so forth. So initially it's difficult to kind of approach it, but that can be overcome.
되니마징아 딜리도디 통사 디 따이 카라 따니 셴네 아니 신다 콜로요 딜로 콜로 침부지 뭐 디가 짜도샤 디가 메디 로다 내가 다 당가서 패션에 유지 신다 콜로 데르샤선 아니 신이 간서 들리다 아니 간서 치도 간서 신고다 미취래 데 찌블래 데 참아 찌클로 신사래 이 카르는 주 하고 아때 다 알레 어디 데르샤 데르데레 라 디디 간서 겐도 리모트네 땡이 마라 아니 컴퓨터는 땡사요 마라 다 지지라는 로라 샤요요 마 가리 가테 갈 줄래게네 가 저다 칸데진 하고 마라 라 문데 거라 근데 이제 질러도 안 되는 거 라트이다
Now, if I tell you a funny story, I actually saw a chariot later on in Delhi when I was in Delhi, and I saw a cart that was being carried by a horse. So that's a chariot, basically. And now, like I've already studied the different parts of the chariot. I know the term axle, I know the term spoke, and all these things. But when I actually saw the chariot, even though I know the term, I cannot point to which is the spoke, which is the axle. Because in the classical monastic institutions, they do not teach you with like visually. They wouldn't draw a chariot and talk about this is the spoke. It's all oral. So it became funny that when you actually saw the chariot, you know everything about the chariot, but you couldn't point to what exactly is the spoke, what exactly is the axle.
인지도를 야보다 그것도 리무간 땡이다 라 얘데 nga 가서 아리들이 그 부고들래 때문 땡이다 얘데 냠도 테스타야 봐 파탄데 kinza 쇼도 담보따디 이 테스트 부고 냠도 테스트 저런 못 따라 고지 쇼도 담보 건조지 저따로스테 되네 칼리티 저따들래 쓰로주 되네 파파 칼리 파티도다 미기 럽탄데 빼고 통스 파탄데 가서 지 칼로 녀츠그들로 지린지다 부글라스 자에 치들어다야 라 아니 콘서 칼리 파티드 파팅 서부 pen 제가 가서 밀럽디는 오늘 리모트다 아무나 지 남주도다 너무나 된데 간을 파티야 안 치데 칼리 담보 저따지 아니 천시체 되네 파파파 판도식다 pen이죠 근데 로테는 시들 하야
So I really appreciate the manner in which children are being educated nowadays, that there is the visual element. Even when they are young, the visual element really helps them to learn better. For example, I spent some time in the West with my own cousins who are children, and they watch like educational videos. And I spent some time watching these educational videos, and I really appreciate the manner in which these educational videos help the child to make sense of their surrounding and learn about their surrounding. And you become engrossed in it, and then you realize that this is very helpful actually. They do not immediately teach a word. They first show you like a shape, and then they color the shape, and then this shape becomes something that is prevalent in their surroundings, and only then they begin to teach the term. That is very helpful, and I think that visual element could be very helpful in education of children.
That's all. Nani, tanganzu chikdora. Tadi chipada varishtain kazanga doya dera. Tujiri chikdora. Shangchu ringwa, mese shin lajda. Konsachu yi karasunda bezo chena ani da kasa sanje yi koma thaya de la ya ani rimbu yo mara do chitina sonshara. Bezo chena ma da khanda khaji la na de bezo chewa ina nganzo kare ina sanje yi koma thaya ina rinya yo mara do sonshita da tsaw khorana la shangju ringwa ma ina de shangju le de ko da nyande nja la shaydra. Ringwa mese shin yis dene sanje rani yinbi sanje rani yinba nyewa ni mesashin tapena dile is rani kan dewa shibu nimbu de raju le yo sa ani nga bede kora bede sanje de ta nyebu yin sam tende ki sam ta yo mari le ndo san dra nyewa mesam shin is la de ya chikche dene sanje nan ji den le se chungsi maye se lo tube mo ta lo tuba de tende pena nganzu ki tanda YouTube ra pena zuda ti ro rishala soba tende YouTube la menda sangra tende YouTube hawa me bani pena tezu nganzu lo tube ngola ani tende hawa de kala na paranshi tuba de demba tuba ta yo mara YouTube hawa me banes yanda chishin richir paola di koi chuni 지난 가서 도도로 시와이나 간줄래 단데 유튜브 안가라줄라 나디야 참아 심제 뜻줄라 아니 튜브 온건 하와 라 다 뜻줄 파 응네기 바지 사제데 뜻줄 따원데 갈라 아니 바다 베라신 바 춘이그라신 바 덴데지 바또 투그레레서 안다치
Now similarly verse number 61 enlightenment should not be taught far off nor should it be considered close at hand. Now this is important. So His Holiness the Dalai Lama says that these two lines, enlightenment should not be taught far off, nor should it be considered close at hand, instructs us on the importance of effort in our spiritual practice. Rather than being discouraged that enlightenment is something so far away that we can never hope to reach, and also as opposed to that, thinking that okay, the Dharmadatu or the Buddha nature resides within ourselves, so it's already in at hand, then becoming totally complacent. It is important to take a realistic approach towards our spiritual practice, understanding that effort is required. It depends on effort, whether enlightenment is far or enlightenment is near. It's not that enlightenment itself is far or it's already close at hand. Then moving on, now it's touching on our previous discussions about the six consciousnesses and its objects, and the manner in which these objects, when they appear to the six consciousness, either the consciousness themselves become mistaken with regards to the appearances of the object, or these six consciousness begins to conceptualize, superimpose qualities and so on onto the objects themselves. So the next two lines, when objects, six in kind, 5 sensory objects, 1 mental object, okay, 5 sense consciousness, 1 mental consciousness. So 6 objects, 6 in kind, do not appear intrinsically, do not appear as having some intrinsic nature. Then the genuine is known just as it is. True reality is perceived as it is then. And that itself is enlightenment. Now we look at the other translation, see if this makes more sense for you. Don't think enlightenment is far away, and don't conceive it as close by. With sixfold objects not appearing intrinsically, it is awareness of reality just as it is. It is awareness. Enlightenment is awareness of reality as it is. It's pure awareness which cognizes reality as it is.
Taundina dara pe shadang ambale. Ambada hakuina sami.
Kakuichurkons. Nangbalana changambalara.
Changambala. Tanda dinla da pedi dinle kshada. Chitaro ma tangde pe chitang chuda oman dishna ngambe ki chitu wisra. Kaga. Chitang ngazu ki
Tilagora.
ah
Tilagora.
deo. Tang ngazu ale di ngambe ki chigi ba kande agora. Pe kora la ngazu te moya da. Kadi chere ngambe kande chewor. Dira. Chitang dero da ta ina kanji manji khala na dilini jibi shireb digi ani ndiba da mandiba tata chetu tuegi pedo ji shagirwa. Cheta chuda oma de chiran riel she kabu ji tsugo yore ine yang de ngamba gi chidro oma de pe kaga chetu gore ela ora. Pena chita oma tangde karsa chitaro oma tangde chus oma tangde bi chus. Nöji nane neba na che oma da chuni de nöji na lo la lu ba ina de ne sha ba ina ngamba oma 통지 진 남백이 오마드 동 아니 취니 마인스 취니 마통네 샤 두고 있어라 퇴직네 베드 레디에 와이네 오마동 취마동네 샤 두고 그래라
Tading ngoma ai.
아
Tading ngoma.
그래서 디페 거라랑 가서 타면 되다
Now we come to one of these metaphors that we might struggle with in the next line. Number 62, just as milk and water mixed together are present in the very same container, but a crane would drink the milk and not the water. The case of transformation is like this. Do you have in any of your cultures such a belief that a swan, a geese, or a crane is able to drink only the milk from a mixture of water and milk? No? Dita jaga korang girati da.
제가
The pekinzo de mamboyora.
더 빼 제가
There are other metaphors and other classical examples, such as that there is the same bird, swan, that mi wala woma kap nishara, woma gana reji kap nishana. ता timna kaze phona ya phigi woma ka ready kana chikhan de timna phona ya khogi dik parje de mara. Yene chaji gyore lagida. Chadi ki thokale denna phigi timna phor lagida.
제가 값셔지 되가
Timna khorang degiris.
마길라
Parje khora
빠지라
degiris.
아
Tindrishe da.
괜찮아 빼 가시 괜찮아
So there are many classical analogies and metaphors like that. For example, there is this analogy that if you keep a pot of curd or milk covered with a white cloth, and then on the top, like anything passes through, the shadow might stay on the white cloth, but the imprint wouldn't stay, right? The imprint of the shadow wouldn't stay. But there is a particular bird who spends so much time on top of the roof like that, and then it's, what do you call this? An imprint of its palm or whatever actually stays on the.
잠자가서 빼 거라는 뭐가 있나라 빼는 가서 당당 배기 레기도 ngambadi chudo omande badila ani zonal goye omade tung chudo shagire hela tang pe de dinde jiyo badami gi thon manyu na ya pe thela tene ani o tang pe ne miji gi kecha ma kaji ma shige na sosala goya lapcha dile ma goye ni isha mira dinga zu ha ko da o sosal de ji chuden kore na labjon kore na khadi khoji ma muji she gora tinalo kecha ma goya zu goya zile la ora tenda pe de la zo monde orde 이내야 어디 배기 들리지 지기나 나저에 들리지 제 도알이라 나바 거라 나저 제바 마토나야 들리지야 잠자 되는데 시에를 레사를 또 들리지 줘.
So if you do struggle buying into the premises of this kind of metaphors, the basic premise itself, it is important to understand, maybe for the sake of argument, accept it first, the premise of the metaphor, and then look at the meaning it is trying to convey. And if you can understand the meaning through the metaphor, then the metaphor has served its purpose. You do not. After that, if you understood the meaning, then you can forget about the metaphor.
세상에 뭐 원하시되 게도 주송구다. 그런저기 밀면 최시디 남도나도 최시디 배치라바 표시단 게라. 가서는 코파이 시고를 시에게 치드레스. 당서 대 시샤도 디가라 딜라 쇼부지 가서 봐 라파트를 해입니다. dila kantu chitu khara lama shung lama ken shegora mato namdi ngana chi thwa thele inare pe shawa inare susu gi pa nacho ngodo in khazi gi pa rapa khonzo de shina megi nye de la nesila pa be ta khotu ur sungda ta chi trouble yagi man do da chi nga da du chama be heden kotun khumara chana kale karore te sung ngune te khoji chimbuda.
So this is exactly the reason our teachers used to advise us that when you are teaching, it is important to use a convenient language, to use accessible language. So as a general rule, when I give Dharma teachings, introductory Dharma teachings, I always try to use very layman terms, in a language that is convenient and accessible to the participants. But now, when we are studying a particular text, there is a responsibility to stay faithful for the text too. So as such, we cannot help but try to unpack these examples and try to understand these technical terms. Can we break for lunch now?